Wait a minute, which meeting is
I know, that's not what I'm talking about.
Hey everybody, this is Quinn Welch, the mayor's office. Just want to let everybody know we are live streaming on YouTube. Thank you.
Hey, Quinn.
How you doing, Ray?
Good. How you doing?
Good,
Hey,
good.
Ray.
Hey, Craig. How you doing? Hey,
how are
Kevin.
you
How you doing, man?
Hey, Micah. Bob, you doing okay?
I am. How are you, Kevin?
Good.
You guys are doing a very, very good job. This is amazing how you pulled this all together so quickly.
Well, the credit goes to Quinn.
Kudos, Quinn.
Thank you very much. We're doing it one step at a time.
Ray, I don't know how many Zoom calls I've seen you on with. Oh my goodness. And most of you.
It's the new norm, new way of life.
New norm.
Somehow I think it's a trend that may stick around even after.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Hi, Craig. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good. Thank you.
Good.
Hey, Kevin, who's handling PPE stuff for the city?
Pat Duggar at the
Pat,
EOC.
right.
Yeah. Mhm. She's done a phenomenal job during
Yes,
all this.
yes. The problem we're going to have is with this reopening or restart, and I'm glad it is phased in. There's a lot of folks that are going to open their business and haven't put a lot of thought about PPE, unfortunately.
Yeah, and there's, as you know, in a lot of cases, there's a pretty long lead time to getting what you need. There's Tatum.
Hello.
Tatum.
We'll start here in about 3 minutes, everybody. And just as a reminder, we are live on YouTube. Thank you.
Morning.
Morning, Mayor.
How's everybody?
Morning.
Very
I'm
good.
about zoomed out. I have 3 or 4 Zoom meetings a day. Oh, well, it's all good. I like it actually, but and who said it? Ray, did you say it? I think it is going to be more the norm.
It's normal.
No, we don't have to get in our car and go someplace for a meeting and come back, and it just allows us to pack a whole lot more in every day.
Well, Mayor, we are raising the kids on Zoom. My kids are Zooming 3 or 4 days a week in class. We're raising our kids on Zoom.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I've been Zooming with my family. That's how we get together, right?
Absolutely.
Whew.
Ray, how you like being a school teacher?
Oh man, it's exhausting. A lot of respect. A lot of respect.
Ray, can I say something? And I know the mayor will probably want to jump in here just before we get officially started. I know we're on Quinn, don't worry about that. But this is for Micah, Tatum, and I don't see Stephanie on here yet, but
I'm on here.
Stephanie is on there. That's the phone number down at the bottom. Just a quick thank you to the 3 of you all in your offices this week, trying to help us coordinate with the Federal Medical Center out on Leestown Road, trying to address some of the issues from the COVID instances out there. Mayor, I don't know if you want to say anything before we get started on that or not, but just a quick thank you.
Well, that's a good point, and I do appreciate your help. Tyler just sent me an update They've got 89 positive, 6 in the hospital, all in ICU, 5 on ventilators. It's, I'm just thankful we have finally made, progress out there. So a lot of people helped with that, including the newspaper.
So with that, Quinn, you want to read your notice so Ray can start?
Yes. Thank you all again for being here today. I'm Quinn Welch, aide to the mayor in the mayor's office. So I've got to read a statement before every meeting. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, state of emergency, and Governor Beshear's executive orders regarding social distancing, this meeting is being held via teleconference pursuant to Senate Bill 150, as signed by the governor on March 30th, 2020, and Attorney General Opinion 20-05, and in accordance with KRS 61.826, because it is not feasible to offer a primary physical location for the meeting. Ray, you want to take it from there?
Yeah, thanks, Quinn. Appreciate it. And I want to echo Kevin. Quinn, thanks for all your hard work. You've done a great job of coordinating everything this week. So I think we just want to get started with a quick introduction of membership. So for anybody that's watching, they know who we are and what we do. My name is Ray Daniels. I own Equity Solutions Group. I'm board chair of Commerce Lexington in 2020, and I'm also on the school board. It's great to be here. And I'll just call your name so it's easier that way. Bob.
Bob Quick, Commerce Lexington. And I'm one of the vice chairs of this particular area in this
Craig.
group.
Hi, Craig Bentz. I'm with the mayor's office with the office of the chief development officer.
Okay, Kevin.
I'm Kevin Atkins. I'm in the mayor's office, the chief development officer.
Micah.
Micah Sims. I'm field representative for Senator Rand Paul.
Thanks for being here, Micah. Tatum.
Tatum Dale, District Director for Congressman Barr.
Thank you, Tatum. And of course, our mayor.
Good morning, Linda Gorton. Great to see all of you. Thanks, Ray.
Thank you, Mayor. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Ray. Vice Mayor Steve Kay. Also, thank you all for being here.
Andy.
Hi, I'm Andy Johnson. I handle the government relations for Commerce Lexington.
Daryl.
Daryl Smith, working economic development for LG&E and Kentucky Utilities Company.
Thanks for being here, Daryl. George.
George Ward with the University of Kentucky. I'm at the Coldstream Research Campus and also coordinate our Economic Development Collaborative at UK.
Thank you, George. And I think, Stephanie, you're on the phone.
Yes, I'm on the phone. I'm field representative for Senator Mitch McConnell.
Okay. Thanks for being here, Stephanie. And Quinn, at one time, Quinn, for yourself, a quick shout out.
Yeah, sorry, I had to unmute there. Quinn Welch, aide to the mayor's office. Thank you.
Okay, so you guys have all seen the notes on some of the parameters of what we're trying to get done, but I will restate them. And depending on how much we get accomplished is how often we need to get together. So that will be to be determined. But our mission here is to discuss reopening benchmarks and guidelines for the government and economic development of our city. So that's kind of our real mission. And what we want to do, what we're working for is our final delivery. And our final delivery is, what is our plan for reopening? What are the benchmarks with the guidelines? And what are the things that are needed to reopen? What do businesses and organizations in the government and economic development sector need to reopen safely? And how do we use that and use the governor's healthy 10 guidelines as a basis for reopening? And then finally, what is the process for scaling back operations while safely maintaining operations in the event that we have a second wave of COVID-19? So we want to look forward a little bit too as we discuss some of these things. So some of the things that we're going to lean on in our discussion will be, of course, the governor's 10 rules for reopening. We're going to lean on that as we take our guidance from the governor, who is taking a lot of his guidance from the CDC. We were given some information about Toyota's 101 points, their plan of reopening. And then we were given some guidance on what the city of Knoxville is doing for us to look at and compare. And then lastly, there's a questionnaire that we'll want to look at and have a discussion around and maybe get some feedback around that Mary Quinn sent out. That was part of the materials that were sent out, and we want to have some discussion around that. So that's kind of where we want to go. And I don't want to dominate the conversation, so I'll just let whoever wants to jump in. Let's go ahead and begin and talk about, your thoughts around some of the benchmarks and guidelines.
I'll jump in, Ray.
Yes, ma'am.
I think that I just wanted to reiterate, and he's going to come out with some guidelines for government itself, but his minimum requirements for businesses, I think some of them are very easy for everybody to say, okay. For example, continue to telework where possible. I just think that might be an easy one. And then phasing in. I think the PPE, maybe you said it in the beginning, or Bob, someone said it in the beginning. The PPE is an issue because of the ability to acquire it. We've been working really hard in government to acquire it. And we haven't found thermometers yet. So we're going to be having people take their temperatures at home. And, but I think that one is a good one to start with, to just say, can we telework, as many people as possible. It looks like everybody here, well, George, you look like you're in your office.
I am.
I'm in
But
my
I'm
office.
isolated here.
Right. But many people are teleworking. So that's, I think that probably is our first guidance based on what we've got, right? It's an easy one.
Well, it's an easy one, Mary, as you raise a point, and it's also the one that is the one that we're all adjusting to right now. So that's, I think for some businesses, it may be harder to do that, but I want your point about the PPE. The problem that I'm hearing from a lot of businesses on PPE is that there's not a retail outlet for it. So that means you have to try to compete with municipalities, with essential companies when you're trying to order your PPEs. And what's happening is, as companies wake up today and they find out that there's a date for them to open somewhere out there, and they're trying to figure out, well, where will I go get that stuff? Then they're finding out the reality of how hard and how long it's going to take to get it. So like you said, there are decisions that companies will need to make, thermometers and those kind of things. What can you do differently than having the actual product in your hand? But that's going to be the real issue as companies wake up and realize there's not really a real retail place to go get this stuff.
So I want to back up just a second. Would it be good for us our subcommittee is government and economic development. So maybe we ought to back up and look at what we're talking about, because we're not talking about small business. We're not talking about, and Kevin, you can rattle off all the subcommittees better than I can. They're somewhere back in my mind, but we're not talking about, our committee's not talking about restaurants or bars or hospitals. We're specifically talking about government and economic development. George, you represent that sector, Daryl. Maybe should we put a little bit of structure around that? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Mayor. We ought to focus, on our main topic, which is government and economic development. I think starting to work through what you started on was the Healthy at Work initiative that the governor stated, and going through that list really quickly. And you had started with teleworking.
Mhm,
And then maybe have a discussion around how do you phase return to work? I believe that's the next one.
mhm.
You know, Ray, and just real quick, not to add another agenda item or topic. I think for this group, one of the issues becomes how do we communicate with our businesses, our government partners, George, the folks that you've got out there at Coldstream and others, about what are the guidelines? How do you do these things safely? Are there messages we need? We've got the three congressional offices on this call. Are there things we need to relate back into that message, which Andy does on a regular basis? Those type of things. This is the perfect forum, this subcommittee, for items like that.
And Kevin, you said that very correctly. Right now, what business needs is guidance, and general guidance, and then specific to their business. We can have in the same industries and the same business type, and they all have things unique to them. And so we're trying, what we're spending a lot of time is getting those specific answers. We're working with the congressional and Senate staffs, the governor's office, economic development office in Frankfurt. So today we're coming out with something we've been hearing on all of our different subgroups. It's a reopen your business. This is good for nonprofits. It's good for different groups. It pulls everything together from, it's a brief document. It doesn't get into all the detail, but it pulls together information so that if you're a small business, big business, government entity, nonprofit, you can get an overview of the different things you need to be thinking about, from supply chain to what is CDC telling me that we have to do, the state, local. We worked with Dr. Humbaugh on this as well. He took a look at it, has some great additions. So Kevin, I go back to the one thing is people need information, and then we've got to tailor it. And then you're exactly right. Supply chain. A lot of these businesses, many small, have been doing other things to survive. Now, as they're phasing open, they need the supply, and they really haven't thought a lot about sources, hoping it would be there. But again, I think you said as well, or Ray did, now we're going to start having different groups competing for the same product. So we've got to figure out how to find those supply sources. But anyway, it's the simple things that we need to do that right now they need help with.
We obtain a copy of that. Has that been published yet, or is it still in draft form?
Yeah, it has not been published yet. We're finalizing it. And this is going to change as the different, like CDC right now, I know is rethinking some of their guidelines. I heard this morning. As that changes, we're going to have to keep updating this. So we're trying to make sure that, we're providing people the latest information. But that should be coming out sometime today. And I was going to try to make it available to all of our different subgroups to use. We'll have it on our website. That's probably the best place to be able to, for people to have access to it.
Thank you.
And if we find other pieces out there, we'll promote those too. So it's not a thing we're trying to have a lock on this. We just need as much information simplified as we can. And then I can tell you the questions, the calls will start rolling in about, well, what's this mean to my particular business? How do I fit that so that I'm in compliance? And that's what we've been doing since the very beginning. And it's a 24/7 job.
Bob, does your document, that really sounds wonderful. Does your document talk about distancing and masks and teleworking? And does it sort of follow those guidelines on how to do that, particularly with?
Yes, it's got in here the healthy at work. We list the different websites they can go to get CDC information, Commonwealth of Kentucky information, local information. It has the reopening phases in it, reopening requirements. We have 14 different requirements that have been passed on down to us. Other recommendations, how to manage the new normal in your workplace, staff policies and procedures to consider. Several pages of that, how to assess your physical workplace. One of the things with business, our customers, they're not going to come back in our stores, our shops, into our offices until they're confident they're safe. So we're also trying to provide that type of information for people to know what they need to do for the cleanliness, how to protect your workforce. My workforce is the same as all of yours. And that is they've got concerns. We have, there's 2 in our building. So how do we combine
Your customers, they're not going to come back in our stores, our shops, into our offices until they're confident they're safe. So we're also trying to provide that type of information.
Jen, I think you may have the YouTube stream on. Is that?
Oh, yeah, I'll do it.
For the clinic.
So our employees want to know safety in our common space because we have another company in our building. And so some of the companies, they're going to have multiple firms. And so how do they all work together? And then how to protect your clients and the public. And like I said, we'll keep adding to it, updating it as necessary, but we'll have this on our website. I talked with our chief communications officer last night, and he was saying he thought he could get that on today. We just want to make sure everything we put out there is the most accurate, most current.
So Bob, what I hear you saying, and when it comes to communication, and I guess we all can agree, the information may change, it may continue to change, and we need a place to post the information, but understanding that it has to be continually updated.
Yes.
If I can, Ray, jump in and kind of follow up with what Bob had to say. I guess one of the things I'm keenly aware of, because I happen to fall into one of the at-risk categories, is that I think we need to be thinking about the different ways to approach people who are in different phases in their life. So younger people may feel that it's safe to go out, and there are things that they need to be thinking about. But if we're interested in long-term economic development, I think the question is, how do we message so that people who can think of themselves as at various levels of risk, how do we talk to them about what it's appropriate for them to do so that we can get them back out? Again, I'll just speak for myself. I'm one of the people who very early on said, I'm staying home. And until I feel really confident that I can go out and be safe, I'm not going anywhere, as much as I'd like to, as much as I miss some of the things that I get to do. So I think it cuts differently for younger people. And I think just has to be factored into our thinking about how we message to people in the community.
Very good point.
Yeah, when I saw the question, how do we communicate it? I just wrote, we need to over communicate it. We need to communicate it every way we can communicate anything. And, so we need to do things, websites, we need to do programming, we need to do, similar to maybe even what the governor's doing by having a daily briefing, those kinds of things, because, I think how I get exposed to news, and it's a lot different than how, Steve was talking about how the young people would react to things, but also how they receive their news. So we need to be on Facebook, and we need to be on, I don't know what other social media, but everything we can do to get the word out to everyone.
So Ray, I think, one thing the mayor and Tyler and Quinn and others in our shop yesterday, working with the League of Cities on, I'm kind of circling back to where you started. We've been working on the proposed guidelines, our kind of suggestions back, and the mayor can talk more about that if she would like. But I think one of the things we need to talk about is, obviously government will have to adhere to what those guidelines are. But how do we, Daryl, I look at you, and one of the calls we had on yesterday with an IT firm, how are utilities, when they have to go out and they're having to deal with clients, how are they addressing, those specific needs and doing so safely in that interaction and those type of things?
Yeah, that's a good point. Of course, we're an essential industry. I was on a webinar with some of our colleagues across the country, and many of them, some had stopped doing all but essential work. Others had worked to make sure those teams were staying so far apart. I know we had a social media post out about a group of employees meeting, but showing how they were sitting social distancing. And I think we're using social media channels. We're on Twitter, Facebook a lot, talking about safe at home, safe at work. So we're pumping out quite a few messages like that. But one thing hit me. I don't know, Kevin and others, whether our company's talking to Columbia Gas or Kentucky American Water or others in similar industry. And maybe something that could come through this process is kind of an interagency collaboration where we share best practices amongst those groups.
You know, Daryl, I think that was one of the intentions of when the mayor worked with all of us to put this together. One of the original intentions was, okay, Daryl, you're in a utility. Can you kind of talk to your colleagues out there in the other utilities and do exactly what you just said? What are the best practice models that are out there right now?
Yeah, and for example, you know, of course, I'm not here as an official spokesman for my company, but I can tell you I've been working at home, you know, probably almost 2 months now. Of course, my job is a bit different and I'm more flexible in that regard, but we have enacted a process where we are very much a proponent of telework. And I think that if you're looking for examples, Mayor and others, I think our company is one of those who has adopted telework. And it seems to be working very well, and we're not having any safety incidences, and we're keeping people productive in this new environment.
Well, and Daryl, you're like, in a way, like government. We have about 1,500 of our employees who can't telework. They're out there, police, fire, corrections, E911, they can't telework. So the two challenges are, you see who can telework and then get fit up for teleworking, and then figure out how do we keep safe our employees who are out in the field. Like you have a lot of employees out in the field. So there's got to be guidelines. It sounds like you have done those.
Yeah, I just don't know if anyone from our company has, you know, whether, as I said, we're working in collaboration with others. We may be, and I'm not aware of it, but we do have a good plan in place and could probably share information to a certain degree with others.
I think that would be helpful.
I think that's a very good point. If we could get people to share their safety plans, their restart plans, big and small companies, government, nonprofits, everyone, if we could have a clearinghouse for that, I think that would be tremendous. So people would have more access to what to do.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, Bob, is that we have, I like George's over communicate, you know, whenever possible. We have 3 opening strategies at Fayette County Schools. We have 3 dates we're looking at, and each date requires a different set of attention points. So we need to definitely get all of our plans to you guys, because those plans, depending on the date we open, are all different safety plans and reopening plans. So I could see how everybody probably needs to share and learn best practices and work together to understand what everyone else is going through, which helps the overall machine of government and helps the overall machine of economic development if we all understand what we're all going through.
Those Fayette County school opening dates, or any county schools where the employees feed into Fayette County, are going to play a big role in the availability of employees as well. Because if the schools don't open, there's going to be a lot of people that still aren't going to be able to come to work because it's very difficult to find childcare as well.
We're already hearing that, childcare.
George, I have a quick question. I mean, Dr. Capilouto is going to talk with the Education Committee about the broader aspect of getting restarted at UK, but you're right there in the economic development. How are some of the research entities and things that probably have been continuing to go on, especially in healthcare? What's going on there to take precautions to make sure everybody's, and they may not be in healthcare, I don't mean just in healthcare, but you've got a lot of incubator type programs under you. How are you all addressing that?
Yeah, it's interesting. Most of research has stopped at UK, with the exception of things that are specific to COVID-19. And the vice president of research right now is working through, reopening and how we address that to get other researchers back. In the Aztec building, where we have private companies, we've been allowed to continue operation. And we did encourage, people to work from home if they can. And what's happened is, there's 21 companies in there. There's probably only 2 that have been active over the last couple of months. And both of those are doing things related to, hand sanitizers or testing of COVID. So most people have stayed home on their own anyway. But those guidelines will be coming out. And then on campus in general, there's a pretty elaborate emergency operations web, I guess you would call it, where there's a core emergency operations committee, and then there's 18 other work groups working around it on various areas, similar to what we're doing here. And everything feeds up, and then decisions are made. But one of the things going on right now is there are 3 teams of 8 people, and it's a mix of administration, faculty, staff, students, and they are working through 4 different scenarios of reopening. So one's reopening on the normal start date, one's on a delayed start date, one is a hybrid where some people are in person, some people are online, and then one is online only. And those reports from those 8 groups are due on Monday to our EOC. And then, they're going to use those work streams to pull out the best ideas and then figure out the logistics to actually implementing those. So in the next couple of weeks, there'll be a lot more information out of UK as to how the rest of the campus will reopen. And then like I said before, the research side of it is kind of running a separate study, and they'll have guidance. And I think the research can come back quicker, but some of the, you still have to do the social distancing and that kind of thing. And you can't have multiple people touching the same instruments without it being sanitized. So there'll be a lot of procedures put in place to protect the folks that are in there.
Hey, George, I have a quick question. So those companies in Aztec that are actual companies, not just doing research, were they able to apply for PPP?
Yes. And
okay, so they're still being paid and they're still able to have payroll tax and all that.
Yeah, I know of a couple of companies that received their checks already.
That's good.
Ray, Kevin, the document itself, what we're producing. So is the objective of the written material, because this is going to the governor's office, just to show and articulate how we're planning to reopen access to government services at all levels, as well as how we're going to pursue economic development activities? Is that really the focus of hitting the benchmarks? Because that would be more talking specifically about with local government. I think from our perspective, the biggest questions have come up about planning and how businesses access those processes, whether it's who they're supposed to contact if people aren't in the office or online or meetings, just how that's going to be different if you can't do some of the in-person interactions for those business services, whether it's approvals or permitting or any of that type of stuff. I think at the federal level with the federal offices, we've done a pretty good job of making sure they get in contact with folks. Maybe just reiterating how those functions are occurring would be good, just because of the loan programs. But from what Jenna does, I'm not sure if that's more of a teleworking or people are going to be doing site visits, or if is that the kind of stuff we need to be detailed about with this type of report?
Andy, I think a couple of things. First of all, the mayor and our CAO and Tyler gave approval this morning to restarting the planning commission. So we're going to be standing that back up, much like the council did, Vice Mayor, where we do a couple of tests to make sure it's going to work correctly. But they've been meeting with people. They've been doing it virtually. So business has been being conducted. We're just going to move to that next phase, just like the council did. I think in my mind, and you know, one of the questions I have for Ray, kind of to what you were just talking about, Andy, what does a group like this need to communicate on behalf of our small businesses? What does government need to be communicating, whether it be at the federal level or the local level, maybe communicating with the governor's office, as the mayor does a few times a week? What messages do we need to be communicating now about restarting our economy? We've got all these subgroups, but what do we need to be overall communicating? And, you know, Ray, I don't know what you think is most helpful for the business community. You're the business guy on this committee, you and Bob for the whole group, but that's the kind of thing I think this committee has the most ability to communicate.
No, I think Andy,
Mayor, you may have another thought.
I missed that, Ray.
no, I think Andy hit right on it. Everybody has seen the phased in dates of when they can go back and reopen their businesses. So the next question is, what do I do now? Are these services, are the city and governmental services, are they going to be restarted? Are they going to be available? How do I, if I need to make sure that my folks are certified or they can get their driver's license updated, or I need to get this business license pushed through? And I know those essential businesses have been functioning. It's what are the next steps? How well is the government going to be working with us? So I think to George's point is communication, but Kevin, to your point, it's confidence. How do we instill confidence in our business community that all of our governmental processes and systems are working 100% to their benefit? And I think that's part of our overall communication as well.
And how do we do that and protect employees and protect the public? That's kind of the core issue here. With the Planning Commission, we had to work through how they could get their legal documents. You know, Planning Commission is complicated and they have to have maps there and documents. And so I think each entity has to work through how to do their business, all the time protecting all the people, and yet get the materials that they need. So for instance, we're all here on Zoom. It's a whole nother issue if we all have to see the same document or the same application or something new that popped up, you know. So those are, for us in government, I think those are the challenges. We're working through how to keep people safe, how to get masks, and how to record temperatures. I mean, if you can't take them at the business or at the government, you're going to have people call them in, or have a, you know, we're required, I think, we're going to be required to have a health point person who will get all those temperatures in. I mean, there's a lot of technical stuff like that everybody's going to have to work through. And I know that recently I went to highlight the work that Add Color is doing to make the face shields. And before I ever went in, I had to use hand sanitizer at the door, and then they took my temperature. They do it for everybody. Those are the kinds of things we've got to work through to get to the services. How do we serve people?
So can I, if I can, let me follow up. Ray, I think that the thrust of your question in my mind was really, is there a way for government to convey to the business community what we are absolutely still able to provide that we've always been providing. And if there are some things that are being provided but in an altered way, what does that mean? How are we doing that in a way that keeps them safe and keeps our workers safe? And then if there's anything that the business community relies on that at the moment, and I don't think there's anything like this, but if there is anything that we can't do because of the restrictions, I think it sounds like, is that where you were going with that? Would that be helpful?
That's very, Steve, you said a couple things that are very helpful, and I don't want to get distracted now. I think for us, that confidence is essential because when businesses open, they want to know where all the supports are. And we want to get to supports. We want to get to what we ought to be advocating for. Since we have Micah, Tatum, and Stephanie on the line, what are some of the other supports we want to advocate for? And maybe we'll transition to that as we've talked a lot about communication and confidence. But one of the things you said, Steve, I don't want to forget, because I will. We also need to look at, on the economic development side, what does short-term success and what does long-term success look like? Because we can kind of get a defining statement for both, because when this is all said and done, we need to know what that looks like, because it definitely looks like we don't stop and start again. That's going to be in that success model somewhere. And then we've got to be able to come out of this at some point in a long-term process, figure out how are we going to tell our story? How are we going to document? How are we going to market? And maybe marketing is a strong word, but how is Lexington going to tell the story or document the story of COVID-19 in 2020 and our responses and our confidence and the togetherness that we've showed and worked on with our legislative partners and the whole gamut of it? I think we have to be able to tell it. But Steve, you said something that's huge. We need to be able to have to measure that short term, what that looks like, and what long term, because I think that'll help us work backwards. If we can kind of figure out what short term success looks for, we can kind of work backwards on a couple of things. So I want to, while we have our legislative folks, I want to get out of the communication confidence thing and maybe come back and revisit that. But let's have a brief discussion about what else we need to be advocating for from the federal government in terms of help in this process. So if anybody wants to jump in, go right ahead.
Ray, I just want to jump in real quick. As you go to them, Quinn just gave me the 10-minute notice. So we got about 10 minutes before we have to begin to wrap up so that he can switch gears to the next meeting.
This is Stephanie from Senator McConnell's office. I just sent everybody an email that has links to the CDC reopening guidelines. I think there's some helpful points on those two websites. And on the calls that I've been on this week, there's some issues with liabilities. I was on a call with the Kentucky Chamber, and one of the questions is who do we designate as the person to take temperatures? Because would it be a receptionist that has no healthcare background at all? And, focusing on who would be your point person and what the liabilities are there is an issue. There's just a lot that's going to go into these plans of action for reopening. And I think that a lot of folks that I've spoken with, their documents are pretty fluid, to keep that in mind as well. And then also, the governor is requesting that all of these employees in the public or in government need to be trained on how to use PPE properly and how to, disinfect their government vehicles and this, that, and the other. And a lot of the county judges in my area are concerned about training their employees to use this stuff properly. Is there funding that's going to come from the state or the federal government that's going to help with that issue? And from my standpoint, if there's anything that we can relay, any needs or wants that you need that I can relay to Senator McConnell, I'd be glad to do so. And that's my 2 cents.
I had jotted down early on in our conversation about the PPE, and if there's problems procuring it, for a small business? Is there a way to set up some type of central procurement that government is able to access all the materials and then be able to resell them to the smaller businesses and try to do it that way instead of having, a million small businesses trying to, go after the same equipment. And then, with what Stephanie just said on the training side, we don't need everybody in the world, creating a training video on how to disinfect a car. If we could do that centrally somehow and then disperse that, and that might be it, something, I don't know if the federal government would get into something like that or not, but it would make sense for some type of a clearinghouse to do something like that and then just disperse it to all the states.
George, that's a great idea. I'm looking at the Healthy at Work guidelines. Number 13 is educate and train employees, and it tells who that might be. It must be offered during scheduled work times at no cost to the employee. So if we had a video that could be shared, that would cover all the basics, it would be much more efficient. I think that's a great idea.
And then there should, excuse me, Mayor, there should be a way to train, even if it is a receptionist, to take somebody's temperature. I mean, that doesn't require medical training. And, most people know how to do it themselves anyhow. And Ray, I don't know what you're going to do in the schools, but yeah, I'm on the board at the North YMCA, and they're doing childcare for healthcare workers. And I went over there one day, and they had a station set up right at the front, and they had I think it was a registered nurse that was sitting there, and she was wearing a mask, but on her table, she was taking temperatures of everybody coming in, and she had the hand sanitizer right there. And that can also be a point of PPE distribution as employees are coming to work. So, those are the kinds of things that we can train people to do.
Bob, is this the case? I know sometimes associations go together and do bulk buying.
Mm-hmm.
Have any of the chambers, you're on that national board, have any of the chambers looked at maybe on behalf of the business community kind of being the central purchasing, for lack of a better term, for PPE type items?
A lot of chambers have done different things, but yes, many are pursuing that. I think they're trying to find where they can at least give out names of all the different businesses that are available to provide those products, because there's going to be a shortage and we're going to need everybody that we can get. I know the state chamber is doing that with several PPE type products where they have found a supplier and they're making that available. So yes, there are many that are doing it.
This is I want to make 2 comments real quick, just because I had a situation come up with a company here in Lexington that it was a building, and I don't want to give too much information about this company, but they pushed back on the temperature checking because of HIPAA laws. And so we ended up having to work with another company. The company was a delivery company, actually. So they were wanting, the company was with the delivery guys. They were wanting to check the temperatures of the delivery guys, and they were complaining with the HIPAA laws. And so I don't know if that would take a role in employees getting their temperatures checked by a non-medical personnel. But that's just just something that we ran into recently. I guess if they are an employee of that company, submitting their temperature to that company to work, I would think that maybe the governor's office has already looked at that, but there is that, because it is I guess a temperature is considered giving over their medical information.
And I think by just by the person agreeing to have their temperature taken, that's exactly right. They've given that over. I know we're going to designate someone in HR to be our Healthy at Work officer. Every place is going to need to have one. And so they deal with HIPAA things all the time.
So I wonder if that employee decided, because that was what this delivery company was saying, is that they were not going to mandate that their employees were that they had to. So, I don't know if companies are gonna hit that snag if somebody wanted to come to work, but they weren't necessarily wanting to give over their temperature.
Micah, you just made the point of what we've been dealing with for the last month. Jenna and Andy have been fielding all kinds of questions unique to some companies and others. And we just have to take each one by one to try to get answers and solutions. So this is just another great example where sometimes it's hard, especially if you're business people trying to do 10 other things, how you get answers.
Right. And 10's a small company of 10 is a very, very different than, a larger company.
You're on mute, Kevin.
Yeah, I just realized the message came. Ray, since we're running kind of short on time, what we've told a lot of these committees is, as I look at George, at what UK's doing, Daryl, if what UKU may be doing, or if he can check with some of his colleagues, what are the best practices we need to think about? If they could send some kind of, document over to Quinn, he can really take a look at that and do a good job of including it within the recommendation document. And then I think the other side is if our congressional folks think of ways that we need to make sure that we communicate with them, or they have suggestions on kind of what interaction should be moving forward on some of these things too. If they want to send Quinn some things, Mayor, you may have some other suggestions as well. But that's kind of where we are at this point, and that will help. And then up to Ray and the committee on whether we need to get together again and kind of look at the points that Quinn has put together.
Yeah, and just real quick, Kevin, if actually everybody could send those to Craig, then Craig will kind of put them together, and then we'll work together to work on that. Just keep everything organized.
Yeah, sure. I'll be glad to distribute those if everybody can send them directly to me.
Thank you very much.
Kevin, just quickly, you mentioned the question earlier with our federal delegation. One of the things I read this morning, some business persons have taken the PPP, but they haven't been able to ramp up their operations fast enough to where that loan may become a loan and not a grant. So there may need to be some flexibility from the federal level in enforcing some of that so that we enable a glide path up for our businesses so they don't get a double whammy of not being able to get that to be a grant. And then on the backside, they have to pay a loan and then their business doesn't take off fast enough. And then they're caught in a really horrible situation.
That's a good suggestion. And real quick on some of the vice mayor said before I lose the train of thought, and how do we kind of communicate to the business community that how do we train or how do we go about saying it's safe to be here?
Tatum, I think you wanted to answer. Daryl, that's an excellent question. The same thing I was thinking about is if Andy and some others have put some thought into that. Tatum.
Yes, we've heard that from a lot of folks, and it's something Treasury's issuing new guidance almost. They seem to issue it on Fridays, but we've got a list of about 450 businesses here that we're sending updates on PPP and EIDL and those things. So if you all have any businesses that have those kinds of questions, we're happy. The congressman's taken several different business concerns directly to Treasury and gotten clarification. On the forgivable guidance, we expect Treasury to issue that sometime today. We're sending that out to a listserv of businesses that have requested help. I think Andy's on there and other folks, but we're happy to add anybody to that list. And also, if it's kind of a particular situation, we're happy to go to Treasury and request some additional guidance. But that's a big picture problem that we're running into as reopening is coming into. So we're happy to keep everybody updated on that and happy to get further clarification on specific questions as well. just feel free to email me and I'll add anybody that would like to the list. And then we'll also try to disseminate that widely so folks have some assurity.
I have one last question, Ray. I know we're out of time just about. So is everybody pretty comfortable that you already have the physical guidelines in place? The masks, the social distancing, the plan for that, the face-to-face interactions, those kinds of things, so that are you all comfortable that you've done those kinds of plans and we don't have to discuss those? Do we have those? I don't know. It sounds like, Daryl, you probably do. I know Toyota has a very hefty plan, which we've seen about where people can sit and where people work and where people can access things. We have to do those first. And if everybody's comfortable that they have those, I think that lets us do some of those other things.
It would be helpful to supply information like that to the very small businesses because they don't have the same resources as some of, that we do or that the larger companies have to come up with those plans. Is there something like that, Bob, that's kind of universal?
Well, I just was texting with Mark Turner on our staff, and that guide is now out.
Yeah.
It's on the website, and others use it too. It varies, George. It varies by who you talk to. Again, some businesses that are small are very sophisticated and have plans ready to go, and many others don't. So it's kind of a hit and miss. I think the bigger issue is a lot of people look at the general guidance, but they have specific questions that they struggle with. And again, just trying to get answers to all those questions is going to be the challenge. But, in this phase, we're going to be going through a lot of phases here of knowledge, understanding, but ultimately that business knows it's got to be safe for its employees. It's got to be safe for the community, its customers. So there's going to be a lot of built-in things that we have to do right. So that means we're going to have to get answers to a lot of questions.
Yeah, George, to your point, I've heard Bob say many times here lately, questions lead to solutions. And this stage right here will be a tremendous amount of questions. And that's why this over communicate. And I'm glad Bob was able to get that out already because it's going to lead to more questions. But that in the end will get everybody safe. And in the end, we'll make sure that all the businesses, no matter how small they are, will have the opportunity to make their businesses safe. So I want to be respectful of everybody's time. And I want to make sure we gather all of this information that we say we were going to gather this week through Craig and through Quinn. And I suggest we meet one more time at least. So as the mayor said, we get past some of the safety stuff and we feel pretty good that we articulate that, get that out and have a good communication plan. And then we can really jump into the economic development stuff that would really be impactful for us short-term and long-term. And we really need to have some discussion around that. So I suggest maybe we get together one more time if everybody's okay with that. And I don't know if Fridays are good, if this time was good. The scheduling is Quinn has to really put this together. It's really hard. And we'll send something around to see if we can do it again next Friday at 10. And if that works, that makes it easy.
Hey, Ray, can we decide the meeting time while we're on this meeting? Because it makes the notification a lot easier for Quinn.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to get at. I was trying to see if next week at 10 would work for everybody.
Also, Fridays will likely be a challenge. I think our deadline's around noon next Friday, if I'm not mistaken. So if we had the ability to meet on Tuesday or Wednesday, that would probably give a little bit more lead time to get a final product in order.
Okay. I forgot about the 15th. We wanted to have that completed. So if everybody can give us some A or nay, or if Tuesday or Wednesday is a better day, and if 10 o'clock's okay.
Tuesday is good with me.
I'm good.
Yeah, we're actually not going to be able to do Tuesday at 10. Excuse me, at 10. I know we're working here. How about would Thursday at 10 be okay? I know we're cutting it a little close on time. But would 10 on Thursday be okay with everybody?
I would have to be a little late, so I would have to be like 10:10 probably.
How about 10:30?
I could do 10:30.
If
Yeah, we can
could-
go ahead and pencil in 10:30. That's
If you
fine.
could do 10:30, I might be able to make it.
Okay.
Good for me.
Right.
Good for
Greg, if
me.
you want to go ahead and reserve that on the Google sheet, we can just go ahead and say 10:30.
So I'm clear, 10:30 next Thursday, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Hey, Craig, did you see my chat to you? Could you add me to the email or the login?
I will do that, yes.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Well, thank you all so much for being here. We do need to get off. Kevin and I've got to be on this next meeting. Ray, anything else?
No, I thank you for everybody's time and put some thought into some things, and maybe we can come back Thursday and finalize some things.
Hey, Ray, thanks for your help on this.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for having me. Thank
A
you.
lot.
So much.
Take care, everybody.
Appreciate it.
So long.